Sunday, November 8th, 1992, just one day before her 22nd birthday, Angela Barrasso did something she did a lot. She went for a bike ride. It was early evening, 7 p.m., sun had already set, and Angela set off to the east, toward Cave Creek Park in North Phoenix. She did not make it far.
The next morning, the morning of Angela's birthday, police found a body, not more than 100 yards from Angela's apartment complex, in a field near a dry wash, naked, wearing only shoes and socks. She was mutilated, her blood-soaked clothes carefully placed in a pile nearby.
Police can't confirm that the body is Angela Barrasso. There is no head, and there's no sign of Angela's bike.
It was the work of a monster. And what police were just starting to piece together is that this may not be the monster's first victim, or his last.
One of the things that one of the detectives said to me, count on it, this guy's going to do something like this again.
Bicycle officers began to search the canal, and they came across the gruesome sight of a young woman's body.
I'm more alert. I carry a can of mace with me.
We have talked to literally hundreds of people. Is that it's virtually impossible that someone doesn't know something.
We all loved her. She was really cool. I don't know what the motive is. I'm so confused. I really want to know, why.
This is True Crime Arizona, the Zombie Hunter.
The Sunny Slope neighborhood of north central Phoenix in the 1990s was rough and tumble.
The police refer to it as the slope.
William Herman remembers it vividly. After retiring as a high school principal, Herman started a second career in 1990 as a crime reporter.
My best estimate is I was at more than 500 homicides, more than 500. I had to be, because I would sometimes in a night be at 3 homicides. The killing rate was much higher in those days.
Sunny Slope was a constant source of stories and crime. Herman's career as a journalist lasted 25 years, but the murders that started in 1992 stand out.
These stand out to me, these and a few others, because they were so dreadful and so mysterious. This was, as the police say, a real whodunit.
Killing after killing, month after month, woman after woman. But on February 5th, 1992, when a passerby found Cynthia Cano in a drainage ditch in far southwest Phoenix, this was not the obvious beginning of a murder spree. Cano had been stabbed, was clinging to life, but died at the hospital. It does not appear that she was able to communicate with police about what happened to her, or who did this. Investigators say she was last seen at a bar just south of Sunny Slope, near what would become the epicenter of the murders. 3 months later, on May 26th, a 13-year-old girl disappeared while collecting money from neighbors for a school project.
I watched her go around the corner, and there were tree groves there, so she passed in between them, and I saw her in that moment, and then that was the last time I saw her.
Kristen Dennis was just 11 years old when her sister Brandy Myers walked away from their Sunny Slope apartment between 5 and 6 p.m. that evening.
We walked that way every single day, back and forth to school. It was no big deal.
By 8:30 that night, when Brandy didn't return, the family called police.
Now, right away, they had taped off my whole apartments. They had all sorts of squad cars. They had helicopters and police dogs, and they were questioning everybody who lived there. They were questioning people surrounding the area and just trying to come up with what had happened.
Police and volunteers searched all day the day of the 27th with no luck. Then, late in the day on May 28th, they got a tip. Somebody had found the body of a teenage girl in North Phoenix, near a canal. Police raced to the area. At 1 in the morning, A canine and its handler found the body. It was a teenager, but older than Brandy, older than 13. And due to the state of decomposition, investigators quickly concluded this was not Brandy Myers, but another unidentified murder victim. Years later, they would identify her through DNA. Shannon Almach, a runaway who had been given up by her mother years before. She was just 16 when she was killed and left in the desert near the canal. Months went by and still no sign of Brandy Myers or the person responsible for her disappearance. Things were as quiet as they ever were in Sunny Slope, which was not that quiet at all. But there were no more reports of missing or murdered women or girls in the area. That is until November 8th, when Angela Brasso decided to take her fateful and fatal nighttime bike ride.
Angela had moved to Phoenix earlier that year and rented a one-bedroom apartment with her boyfriend. That night, while Angela took off on her bike, her boyfriend stayed home to bake a birthday cake for her. It was supposed to be a surprise.
Her normal routine was to be gone approximately an hour and a half to complete the circuit.
But when she did not return in time to watch their favorite TV show, the boyfriend took off on his bike to look for her. At 10:30 p.m., he called 911.
911, what are you reporting?
The next morning, police made the gruesome discovery.
Well, the body is decapitated. There are multiple injuries which our homicide detectives do not want to discuss at this point. That is other than the decapitation.
Police released very few details about what they knew or what they found, but crime reporter William Herman looked through a telephoto lens and saw the image that would remain with him for the rest of his life.
Her breasts had fallen to the side of her body, completely cut open, and her head gone, and by accounts quickly, with an extraordinarily sharp blade.
It was a scene that raised so many questions. What kind of person would do this? Was she abducted, taken somewhere else and murdered, then brought back to this spot? Or was she murdered here? This was a fairly popular bike path in plain view of apartments and homes, and there are streetlights every 20 yards. So the idea of someone attacking, slicing, decapitating, and removing her clothes out here seems unlikely. But the most ghastly question of them all is, what did the killer do with her head?
She was on the dean's list all 8 trimesters of her college. She's just a super kid. That's all. Just a super kid. And it should have never happened.
This phone interview with a family friend is the only recording we could find with anyone who knew Angela, and it's painful to listen to.
It's tough enough for me being a family friend. You just cannot imagine the hurt and the grief that goes on with the parents. You just can't imagine.
10 days after police found Angela's body, a man who was fishing along the Arizona Canal spotted something in the water, something trapped behind a grate. It was less than 2 miles from where Angela's body was discovered, and the man with the fishing pole knew in his gut he had found something important, something awful.
We decided to go take a look, see if it was really the head. We went over there, and from a distance, it didn't look real, is what it was. But we went down the steps and took a better look at it, real close-up look, and it was the head, basically.
But that was only part of the story. It was the condition of Angela Brasso's head that revealed something else, something even more macabre.
I quickly found out that the head was in amazingly good shape.
This had been a week. It had been a week, and the head is
in very good shape. So what does that mean? It was in a refrigerator, had been cooled and preserved during that time.
heard someone that may have been with her. She may have been in distress. They may have seen an individual leaving the area.
Police still had no suspects, but they knew they were looking for someone dangerous, someone deranged. And people who lived in the area, the Sunny Slope area, were on the verge of panic.
I don't come out here anymore unless I'm with somebody.
Parents kept their children indoors.
You know there's some guy out there and you don't know where he is. He might be one of your mom's best friends or whatever.
My husband's gone a lot. I'm home alone or with my little girl a lot, so I want to know how to defend myself.
I want to deliver the hammer fist through the target.
Self-defense classes were suddenly full. Days led to weeks, which led to months. Police were no closer to solving the murder. They had not found Angela Brasso's bicycle. They had no witnesses.
The best homicide detective in the world will not be able to solve a case without that piece of the puzzle.
It is unclear at this point if detectives were connecting the Brasso case to the Cynthia Cano murder, the Brandy Myers disappearance, and the Shannon Almach murder. Aside from the fact that they were all women, 2 teens and 2 in their 20s, and 3 of them were last seen or were murdered within a few miles of each other, there were no concrete connections. But that changed on September 21st, 1993. 10 months after Angela Brasso's murder, when Melanie Burness, a 17-year-old high school junior, took a nighttime bike ride and vanished. She was last seen near her home in the Arcadia neighborhood of Phoenix. That's south and east of Sunny Slope, about 13 miles. But the following morning, someone walking on a trail along the Arizona Canal spotted blood on the ground. Police found the teenager's body floating in the canal, about 100 yards away from where they found Angela Brasso's head. Again, William Herman was reporting from the scene.
This guy had the guts to take her off her bike. If anyone driving by had just been looking out the window, a kid looking out would say, "Mom, there's a guy dragging a girl off her bicycle." You could have seen it. And this person had the nerve to do that.
What did that tell you about the person who was responsible for this?
Seriously insane, insanely confident of his mission to kill young women.
We all loved her, you know. She was really cool.
Seems so senseless to you?
Oh, it totally does. I don't know what the motive is. I'm so confused. I really want to know, like, why, you know?
Why was a question asked over and over, followed by who? Who did this? Now there were some concrete connections. 2 victims found in a canal, one found near a canal, another one in a drainage ditch. 4 of the victims disappeared from in or near Sunny Slope. 2 of them were riding bikes. Both of those bikes were never recovered. And there was something else, DNA evidence. It would play a critical role later in the case, but at this point, it was a lead, the first lead.
And what that tells us is that there is an individual who is at both homicide scenes. And that's really all it tells us. It doesn't say that that individual even is the killer. What it tells us is a same person was at both homicide scenes and had contact with both victims.
Despite the promise that this lead brought, this was the early 1990s, and DNA science back then wasn't what it is today. So there was no match. There was no arrest. There was no identified killer. In fact, the killing stopped, and what became known as the Canal murders turned cold.
At that time, did you think police were going to solve this case?
Absolutely. They were absorbed in it. There were detectives who had a hard time sleeping at night and were in early and were out walking the scene. Yeah, I was sure they were going to solve it.
But the murders remained unsolved, cold, for more than 20 years, until...
So undercover Phoenix police detectives were able to obtain a DNA sample from the suspect just last week.
He dressed in this zombie hunter kind of cyberpunk outfit.
Coming up on episode 2 of True Crime Arizona, The Zombie Hunter.
He was the invisible man, basically. Looking from the outside in, it would seem like he should stick out like a sore thumb.
True Crime Arizona, The Zombie Hunter is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney.
And me, Morgan Lowe. Sergio Hernandez is the producer.
It's a production of Arizona's Family, CBS 5, 3TV, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.